This is Parliament House in Perth, Western Australia. It's where our elected representatives meet to make decisions about our state, decisions which will affect everyone who lives in WA. Here, the members of Parliament, or politicians, decide such things as when you should go to school, what you should learn there, and at what age you can leave school. They make decisions about where to build the roads and railways to get you there and back. Parliament is the place where laws are made that we all have to live by. Parliament House hasn't always been on this spot. In fact, there hasn't always been a government in Western Australia. Let's travel back in time and see what life was like in the early days of WA's European history. In 1829, the ship Parmelia arrived in Cockburn Sound, carrying Captain James Stirling and the first group of free settlers. It had taken the ship 16 weeks to arrive here from England. James Stirling formed what he called the Swan River Colony. It included the settlements which later became known as Perth, Fremantle and Guildford. In the early days, Captain Stirling ran the whole settlement by himself, and he was called the Lieutenant Governor.
I believe I am the first governor to ever form a settlement without commission, laws, instructions and salary.
But in 1831, James Stirling was officially made the Governor of Western Australia, and a year later, the first government meeting was held. This early government was called the Legislative Council, and WA still has a Legislative Council today. But just like today's government, their job was to make decisions about the colony's growth and to pass laws. The first law in Western Australia was passed in 1832. It was called the Civil Judicature Act, and it began the law court system in the colony. As the colony grew, so did the size of the government, and by 1870, the government had grown from 4 people to 18 members. 12 members were voted for by wealthy landowners, and the other 6 were chosen by the governor. It wasn't a very democratic process. In 1890, Western Australia was granted responsible government, which meant we were finally like the British system of government. We now had 2 houses, or chambers of parliament, and could elect our own government for the first time. The colony's population grew faster than anyone could have imagined, as thousands of people flocked here for the gold rush. And it was time for WA to join the other colonies to make Australia a federation of states. In 1901, at Federation, the colony became the state of Western Australia within the new Commonwealth of Australia. And for the first time, members of Parliament were actually paid for their work. But there was something missing. WA now had 2 houses of Parliament, but no suitable building in which to meet. So plans were drawn up for a grand building overlooking the city and the river. The new Parliament House opened for business in 1904, but it didn't look quite like the design because money ran out during its construction. It would be another 60 years before the eastern wing was added and the Parliament finally got a front door. If you walked through the corridors of Parliament House in the early days, you would not have seen any women members. It wasn't until 1920, after a long debate, that women were allowed to become members of Parliament. 1 year later, WA elected its first female member of Parliament. She was Edith Cowan. WA's Edith Cowan University is named after her, and she's so famous you'll see her face on the $50 note. Today's members of Parliament, or MPs, are chosen at an election by every eligible person in the state over the age of 18. But it wasn't always that way. Prior to 1893, only certain men over the age of 21 were allowed to vote. Then, in 1899, thanks to the efforts of women like Edith Cowan, females were also allowed to vote. It wasn't until 1962 that Aboriginal people were given the right to enrol to vote, and not until 1970 that the voting age was lowered to 18. Let's take a look inside Parliament House as it is today and find out what our MPs actually do in there. The Premier is one of the most powerful members of Parliament. It's his or her job, with the help of the government he or she leads, to run the whole state. This modest office in Parliament House has been used by all premiers of Western Australia since 1964. The political party or coalition of parties that wins the most seats in the Legislative Assembly at an election wins the right to form government. And it's the leader of the winning party or coalition of parties who becomes the Premier. The Premier is the head of government in each of our states, just as the Prime Minister is the head of the federal government. This is where the government of the day sits, in the Legislative Assembly. It's sometimes called the lower house. Lower houses in the Westminster, or British system of government, are almost always green. Here in Western Australia, it's blue. On the opposite side of the room sits the opposition. This is made up of MPs from the political party or coalition of parties and independents who did not win the election. It's their job to question and debate the decisions the government makes.
And an appointment, we are well on the way to appointing a commissioner for mental.
As you may have seen, these discussions can be very energised and noisy at times, so someone needs to keep order in the House.
Thank you, members. Never.
That person is the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, an elected member who is chosen by the other members at the commencement of every parliament.
The Speaker is an elected Member of Parliament and he's elected as Speaker by the Parliament. His role is mainly to keep control over the proceedings of the Legislative Assembly while it is sitting. My job as Sergeant-at-Arms is essentially to be a bodyguard to the Speaker. So before each sitting, I walk into the Parliament before him with the mace over my shoulder. The mace is the symbol of the authority of the House and of the Speaker, and the reason we use the mace is because in ancient times in Britain there were many speakers who had their heads chopped off. So that is the reason why we have the mace, which is an ancient weapon of war. During the sittings of the Legislative Assembly, the mace sits on the table with the head facing the government.
As the Legislative Assembly is the House of the People, there are strict rules about who can and cannot enter its doors. By tradition, the Governor of Western Australia and even the Queen or King are not allowed into this chamber. And even before the MPs of the whole Parliament attend the official opening held in the other chamber, the Legislative Council, a rather strange ritual has to take place here.
Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the Governor requests the attendance of members of the Assembly in the Council Chamber to hear his reasons for calling this session of Parliament. I'm the Usher of the Black Rod. I'm employed by the Legislative Council in the Parliament of Western Australia. I'm appointed by His Excellency the Governor of Western Australia, and it's my role in a normal sitting day to be the President's personal assistant to enable him to maintain order in the House. I mainly have a ceremonial role to perform, including the opening of Parliament, but I also have security duties to perform as well, and then on other occasions some administrative tasks. The Black Rod itself is my staff of office, and it dates back to King Henry VIII. When he left the Palace of Westminster, he left behind Black Rod to look after Westminster in his absence. Honourable members, the President. On a sitting day, it's my role to announce the President to the House. Members will stand, the President will take his seat, bow to members. Members will then resume their seats. The President will read prayers. At the conclusion of prayers, I then place the Black Rod on this holder on the table of the House, and the House will then begin its formal business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House condemns the Barnett government for its failures, in particular its admission that the state budget may go into deficit.
The debates on new laws can go on for hours or even days, and every word has to be faithfully written down. Well, almost every word.
I'm the Hansard reporter, and I go into the chamber and take down on my stenograph machine all the things that the members are saying. I take down their speeches for 10 minutes at a time, and then I bring up the little disc that I've recorded it onto to the computer, and I load it on, and then I have all the members' words transcribed for me. And I can make changes to those speeches, but not very much. I like to make them read nicely, and I correct all their grammar. And the members get to read their duplicates the next day and correct them if they want to, but just a little bit. The Hansard is the document that comes out with all the members' speeches from Parliament. And it was first used in the Westminster system in England by a man called Luke Hansard.
In the corridors around the Chambers of Parliament House, there are hundreds of copies of Hansard dating back to 1876, and they contain every debate and discussion spoken in the chambers. Before a law becomes, well, law, it starts life as what's called a bill. When a bill is first introduced and read to the House, that is its official entry into Parliament. It is called the first reading. Most bills begin life in the Legislative Assembly.
With one that gained.
The contents of the bill are discussed at length, as you'll see later. But once the debate is over and the bill has been approved by a majority of the MPs, it is still not law. It still has to be approved by the Upper House.
So I ask, one.
This is the Upper House, or the Legislative Council. It looks very like the Lower House, but the seats and carpets are red, not blue. There are a few other differences too. The members of the Legislative Council are elected by the people of Western Australia, but rather than represent single electorates, several members represent large regions of the state. In total, there are 36 members of the Legislative Council representing 6 regions in Western Australia. You won't find a speaker in this House. Instead, the job of keeping order in the Legislative Council belongs to the President. So why do we need 2 Houses of Parliament? Well, the Legislative Council is referred to as the House of Review. That's because it carefully reviews the bills that have been passed by the Legislative Assembly. No bill can become law until it is passed through both Houses of Parliament. So now our bill has been passed by both Houses. Does that make it law? Not quite. There's still one step in the process. Before a bill becomes law, it has to have the final assent of one person, the Governor of Western Australia. The Governor is the Queen or King's representative in Western Australia and the third part of the Parliament, along with the Legislative Assembly and the Legislative Council. Without his or her signature, no bill becomes law. Every 4 years, there's a state election. A new government is formed or returned and a new Parliament assembles. Members of Parliament come and go, but the traditions, procedures and duties of our Parliament have been handed down over hundreds of years and will be with us for many, many years to come.